The Vermont Chamber of Commerce here to testify on H 758, the rodenticide bill.
Right.
Should I just?
Yeah, I think you can just dive right in.
Alrighty, I tend to get a little long-winded, so if at any point anybody would like to stop me for questions or.
We tend to interrupt without any concern at all, so yeah.
Alrighty, yeah, so today I'm here the Vermont Chamber represents businesses as a whole and the local and the economy as a whole throughout the state of Vermont. But today I'm here specifically for food manufacturers, restaurants, pest control. So these are both small family producers, local eateries, all the way up to like the recognized Vermont like national brands. So these businesses are really foundational to our tourism, our hospitality, our manufacturing sectors throughout the state. And so we really appreciate the committee having us in today and appreciate the intent to protect wildlife and public health through H 758, which would ban the anticoagulant rodenticides. However, a broad prohibition on these anticoagulants could create really serious unintended consequences for our restaurants, our food manufacturers, and other facilities throughout the states. So just a little context right now, rodent control in these buildings for food manufacturers and restaurants is not optional. Every one of these facilities has a plan for how to control the rodent population in their area. It is required under the FDA, the USDA, the state health regulations. And I believe you all heard from the Agency of Agriculture this morning as to potentially some of the things that they require with their bait stations and rodent-specific entry points and their outdoor traps. So the commercial sector deploys these sorts of things quite frequently via using licensed professionals. And this existing framework really helps to balance environmental protection with food safety compliance. And because a large part of food safety compliance when it comes to rodents is that preventative measure, is keeping rodents out of the building. Like once rodents get into the building, I don't know if anybody knows how quickly mice multiply. I won't get into details. But it's not a fun thing to see or experience. And so once rodents can get into these buildings, it can lead to product destruction or recall for our food manufacturers, temporary shutdowns for deep sanitation across all facilities, and in extreme cases of infestation can also lead to permanent closure of restaurants or manufacturing facilities. Once this infestation is established, it's extremely difficult and very costly to eliminate the infestation. And it just kind of goes to show that keeping these rodents outside the building is really critical, and the use of anticoagulants in these preventative measures is really critical. These rodents can carry all sorts of diseases, and Salmonella, Listeria, Heptavirus, to name just a few. We don't want to have that contaminating our food. We don't want to continue to risk.
So our last witness came in and talked about a product they're using to reduce it, may have reduced the rodent population to 83% of what it is. If you have a food manufacturing business or a restaurant, 17% of the rodent population is still too many.
I would think that any rodents that are inside of a building is probably too many. But when it comes to effectiveness of these anticoagulants and coagulants, I would definitely encourage you to reach out to the pest control experts. They would be able to probably give you some more of the minutia that they could have their living around. I do know that the non-anticoagulants in general can tend to operate a little bit differently from the coagulants, and that they can sometimes be more costly and sometimes are not quite as effective for a long-term prevention of rodents. So it could kind of shift a little bit more from a preventative measure for facilities to more of a reactive measure, which reaction versus prevention, you want to keep them out as much as possible. And then we also understand that in terms of concern about protecting like household pets and wildlife from these anticoagulants, a lot of the kind of documented secondary exposures that we see happening nationally tend to stem from improper residential use. So this would be kind of like when homeowners fail to follow some of the label requirements on rodenticides, and other cases similar to that. Licensed commercial applications, as I mentioned, operate under those strict compliance standards. So another thing that the committee might consider looking into would be addressing residential access and enforcement, specifically to avoid those unintended consequences in the residential sector. So I guess just in closing, wanted to encourage the committee to continue to take testimony on this issue, not just from the pest enforcement sector, but also from other food safety experts, public health officials, and restaurant operators on potential impacts of this bill. Food manufacturers and hospitality businesses are already facing rising costs and regulatory complexity in the states, and we would encourage careful consideration before advancing some broader restrictions that could jeopardize the food safety business in the states.
Great. Thank you very much. Any questions from the committee? Representative Basel.
So it sounds like from what you just said, you don't, I'm going to ask you a question, but I think you probably don't know the answer. So we heard this statistic of with birth control, this birth control strategy, this one business was able to maintain 83% reduction in the number of rodents that were in their facility. And I'm just wondering if you know what the number is that you usually are able to maintain. Like, using rodenticides, is it a higher rate than that, or is it something comparable?
I know that the anticoagulants tend to be more effective than the non-anticoagulants, but I don't want to get into specific details. I would just be kind of guessing.
Yeah, this is a new strategy, so I'm not sure if
Yeah.
all the numbers, if all the comparisons are able to be made, but
I would-
certainly having
yeah, I would
numbers on
highly
the other side would be useful.
I would highly recommend having somebody that like works in pest control and to testify as to the effectiveness of both and any newer options that might be available.
Representative Burt.
Thank you, Jeremy. Given that you represent commerce, in our state, do you think there's any potential concern with, we want to increase the number of businesses that are choosing to locate in our state? Given your position, is there any, you think there's any concern is if we had a ban in place on something like this, not being able to recruit companies to the state, potentially one more thing that could get in the way of that, especially with given that we have Ben and Jerry's cat training.
Yeah, we've spoken with some of our members in the manufacturing and tourism industry, and each of them have said that this would make it harder for them to maintain rodent control in their areas. In addition to the fact that the non-anticoagulants tend to be more costly than the anticoagulants, this would increase the price of business. It might also make it more difficult for them to really establish themselves, especially if they're, renovating a building that's in a downtown through the downtown revitalization fund, then that's more cost to get rid of the rats in the first place. And it's just kind of that cumulative effect of, the more costs we add to businesses, the harder it is for them to stay here, the harder it is for them to expand here, and the harder it is for us to attract the businesses into a place where maybe neighboring states don't have the same restrictions.
The chamber is obviously a membership organization. Is it public information who your members are? Or do you make that public? Is it something you can see on the website? And I'm wondering whether specifically Cabot and Ben and Jerry's are members of the chamber.
Cabot and Ben and Jerry's are members of the Vermont Chamber, although we're not in here representing any one or two specific businesses today. It's more of a broad concern for the industry. In terms of our member list, I can certainly get back to you with the answer to that.
And otherwise you represent restaurants.
So yeah, we represent, so we're with the Vermont Independent Restaurants Association. So we run that, and then restaurants as a whole in the state of Vermont, we represent here as well.
Grocery stores.
That would be the Vermont Retail Grocers Association. I believe that's Maggie Lenz is the lobbyist for that.
Representative Nelson.
Jeremy, perhaps you're not the person to ask, did we have a food manufacturing company that had a big recall not long ago due to a salmonella contamination from rodents
In Vermont.
in Vermont? I think I heard something someplace, in the last year or two.
Jeremy, do you,
Nothing that comes to mind. Doesn't mean it didn't happen. Just nothing that I'm thinking of at the moment that I can remember.
Representative O'Brien?
Jeremy, does the chamber represent food groups and institutions like at colleges, the sort of cafeterias like here, at UVM or St. Mike's or?
So we do have St. Michael's College, UVM, Champlain, Middlebury as our members as well. And I can see where this could potentially affect like residences and cafeterias like within these colleges as well.
Hospitals?
Yep, hospitals, yep. Any cafeterias, most hospitals.
Hospitals too?
Yes, yep, UVM Medical Center and then a few others as well.
All right, good. Anything else that you wanted to add?
Just if you have any other further follow-up questions, feel free to email me at any time. I believe that, yes.
I just Googled that and, in April 2025, there was a voluntary recall of Cabot Creamery, 8-ounce extra creamy premium butter due to coliform bacteria. Yeah, I thought there was one.
Is that AI or is that,
I Googled it. Googled.
From specifically from rodents?
Yeah, I believe so, but that little speculation there.
all right, well, we have a witness here. Let's actually say thank you to the witness and release him.
Well, thank you to the committee, and as always, I'm available for any follow-up or any other questions.
Great.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Appreciate you coming in. We're a little bit early for our next witness, Patricia. I don't know whether they joined us yet.
She joined much earlier and
Okay.
now watching the live stream, I think. And
Okay.
I can reach out to her.
All right, well, why don't we, unless you see somebody appear, why don't we'll take a break.